Hello dear viewers, welcome to another Geometry Nodes tutorial from the Geonodes daily series, where we look at how fast can we make something cool in Geometry Nodes. And today I'm going to show you how you can use this Quart easing function preset to achieve this cool effect. I used in the past presets like this for the easings to affect the spacing of the animation, to affect the shape of a geometry, to affect the way things are instancing. And today we will look at how to use an easing preset to affect rotations. And those will be the points that we'll cover, the one that were on screen. As usual, this video will focus on the geometry nodes. If you want to see how the materials were made, or you want some insight about the lightings and the camera, check out the video in the link in the description, making of the project. I also want to give a big thank you for all of you that are supporting this channel by purchasing the project file from Gumroad, and a big thank you for all of you that are subscribing to this channel, liking the videos, commenting on them, or watching the videos. All these things are really important for this channel's growth. So thank you for your support. Now going back to this video, this is a preset. I'm not gonna go through recreating the preset because it's very similar to what I did with the other ones. So if you want to see an in-depth look at that, check the bouncing preset or the sign preset. For this one, I'm just gonna append this preset, and once we do that, we will find it here. So this is how the preset looks. I'm gonna show it to you if you want to just copy that. As a quick note, for those that are downloading the preset, there is this factor output that I added. You can re-download the file for free, of course. And this is just a quality of life improvement, giving you access to the z-axis. So this is how the preset looks for all of you that want to recreate it. We have the ease in and ease out function, the ease in and out at the same time, and some nodes to switch between them, and to add some controls. Everything is started from a line, and these are the controls that take care of this output that you see if we add it here. So let's say I take this group, and if we look at the output, so let's say I switch to this one, and I'm going to group, and I added this like this. This is what we will end up doing anyway. Okay, so let me put this one into the frame, select this one so we can see what's going on. Look at the front. We have these controls here: is in or is out, is in and is out. And then you have this amplitude control that gives you control over these values. And if you are on this one, you have this amplitude, and that's what's controlled here in this point. So that was the is Quart preset that you can recreate or download with a file on the gumroad. Now you'll create that gyro motion, and we'll see how we can both influence the rotation of the final object and also the scale, and that's gonna be really cool. So I'm gonna start by creating some lines. Let's leave this preset on the rest for the moment. I'm gonna take this curved line, and I want this one to be instance on the x-axis, and I also want VC1 to be set up like you see here. So let's take an instance on points, and this is going to be our instance. And for the points, let's use another line, but this one is gonna be, let me reset this node. This one is gonna be instance on the Z. So right now we have this output. I kind of want to switch this one. Actually, I want, this is better, mesh line, because this one has a control over the number of points directly. And if we switch to endpoints, we can control from here the spreading. And as you can see, we already have this instancing that puts on the screen the lines that we see here. So once we have this, the next thing that I want to do is to scale those instances, because I kind of want to have something going like this. And we can use this preset to do that instancing. So let me take an instance, scale instances, and the way to scale it, it's by using let's say this factor for the scale. And watch what happens here. Everything goes to 0. We don't get anything. So let me do in utilities math and add some value, let's say 0.25, and because we got rid of the 0 value. So I don't want this uniform scaling. I want the in and out, and I want to play a little bit with these values. So let's put this one back to 4, and I'm gonna increase this amplitude a little bit, let's say like 6. And this output doesn't look very good, because now we have to synchronize these two values, this number of points from here. So let's add an integer here, and let's add 75 points here, and then I'm gonna feed this one to the resolution as well. And as soon as we have this in sync, we get these values, and this preset will control how this looks like. And of course this one. So that's the first part, how you can use this preset for scaling. But we want to do much more than this. We kind of want to do rotation, and I'm gonna do this now. So basically we will create this gyro motion. So how can we do that? Well, we will use a rotate instances node, and we will reuse this preset to control the rotation. But first, let's think about it. We want to rotate on one axis. Let's see, this is the axis. So that means we need a vector combine XYZ to only affect one axis. So once we do this, let me save. It's time to figure out what kind of motion we want. And what I was thinking when I created this was something that goes back and forth. Circle, a full circle, and then it goes back, and so on and so forth, creating a perpetual motion. So how can we do this? Well, for everything that involves movement, we will need this node SceneTime that will give us access to the frame. So if we plug this one directly here, we kind of get this, well, we could say interesting movement. Let's add some controls. First of all, I want to control the speed. So let's switch this on to divide and do something like 20 maybe. And now we get to control the speed like you see here of this entire setup. And the next control is the fact that I want to go back and forth. So let's do another math node. And for back and forth, we have this ping pong. So now if we do it like this, we get this value that controls just how much this will rotate. So how can we control now this rotation? We can use, for example, a map range that we can plug here, and then we have this value that we can use it. So how can we use it? Let's say I'm gonna put this ping pong to 1. So we have a range from 0 to 1. So we have this 0 to 1 range, and we can plug this output here. And now these two values will show us just how much we want to rotate this thing. So let's say 360 degrees minus to 360 degrees plus. This is in radians. And now we have this motion. We go back and forth, back and forth. And let me decrease the speed for now. Now we get this this motion. But as you can see, everything moves at the same time, and it's natural because we only provide one single value. So how can we make them do that gyro thing that you saw in the demo? Well, this is where this node comes in. It gives us control over that part. So let me add a math node, and I'm going to switch this on to multiply, plug it here, and now we can use this preset to control each instance just by plugging this one here. You may have noticed that things don't seem to work. So let's do one thing. Let's use this value to synchronize again the number of outputs from this one. And as soon as we do this, we get as an output one value for each instance. And now we get this result that you can see here. So this is basically what we wanted to achieve. Of course, playing with these values will give us different results. So let me say I reduce this out amplitude, I get this increased rotation. And by playing with this value, I can control the lower half. This will be the top half. As you can see here, this is the top half, and this is the lower half that we can control. So I'm going to leave this one to 4, and I'm going to put this one to 1. In the end, I'm going to show you how you can control this better if we expose the values. But for now, we can just leave it as is. So once we did this, we kind of have our motion. So if you are curious how the geometry in the demo was made, well, you can stick around, and I'm going to show you how I created the geometry of this entire setup. So the first thing that I want to do is to turn this line into some geometry. And for that, let's take this node, curve to mesh, that does just that. And we have to provide a profile for this one. So let's use a simple curve circle and plug it here. And we get this very interesting and unusable setup. Usable, not very, because we have to reduce this radius quite a bit. So even more, let's do something like this. And now we kind of get this result that you see here. Let's close it at the end. And let's play with this a little bit more. We have this result. Let's say that I want to sync some values because right now if I play with this number of instances, the scale remains the same. So what I want is for this to change the scale based on the number of instances. And an easy way to do this is to add let's say a map range, and I'm going to plug this into the radius, and I'm going to give it a minimum value, and I'm going to give it a maximum value. So let's say something like this. And then for the input value, let's use this number of instances. And now if we look at this, if we decrease this number, we can control just how many of these we have. So let's say we will use a range from 1 to 200, should be plenty. So now if we play with this range from here, if we have less or more, let's say we have 200 here, this become very thin, but if we have like 10, this will be thicker, controlled by the values that we plug here. So let's say if I remove 10 from here, we get this thickness. So now we have a nice control of this. So let me see, 200. We get this result. This is very thin. And if we go back to 75, they are kind of like this. Excellent. So now we have a nice control for these connector bars. The next things that I want to do is put a center pillar here, and there is an easy way to do this. Let me just add a geometry, join geometry, because we want to add some extra geometry. So what will be the geometry that I want to add? Well, we use this line here to instance stuff on it. So let me quickly do something like this to get access to this connector here and drag it all the way here, and I'm gonna plug it here. So now we have this center line put here, and all we have to do now is to add some geometry to it. So what do we want to have for this one? Of course, we will want a curve to mesh and this circle. So Shift D, I'm going to duplicate these nodes and plug this one here and plug this one here, and I can remove this connection here. And as you can see, we have this error. It's telling us that the input is not right, but we can fix this very simple, because as we can turn a curve into a mesh, we can turn a mesh into a curve. So let's do this. Turn it back into a curve and back to a mesh with this nice profile here. And now we have this center pillar. Awesome. We can play with this some more if we want. So let's say that I want this to be a little bit longer to outstrip this setup. Well, we can do a vector math, and if we take the position, so we have the input position here, I'm gonna plug it into this vector math, and switch this one to scale and add a geometry set position node and plug this one into the position. Now this scale will control, let me put something like this, will control the scale of this entire setup here. As you can see here, this is what's happening. And of course we can use the same node to reposition this entire thing a little bit down to get something like this. This is what I did in the end, getting a little bit of offshoot here and a base to use to add the postament. So once we did this, the next thing that I want to do is add some detail here. I want to do a ring that is going around this center pillar and gives the impression that the bar is connected to it here. So how can we do this? Well, I want this to be connected to every instance, so it has to be somewhere here. So I'm gonna do that. Let's duplicate this join geometry node. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to add different materials for these ones. So let's say I'm gonna put here a set material, and I'm gonna choose, let's say, a blue material for this one. And then I can plug here this one here and add, I don't know, red material. So now we have different materials for these different parts of our setup. So here I can add something else for each instance. And what I want to add, let's do a circle. And if we plug this circle here directly, we get this. And that's not exactly what we want, because what we want is to have a circle for each instance. How can we do that? Well, we can use an instance on points, and that's going to be our instance. And what points do we want? Well, we want these points of this line. So as soon as we do this, hey, we have a circle for each and every instance here. So now it's just a matter of controlling this size. So let's make those a lot smaller. Let me go close, and maybe something like 0.01, maybe something a little bit bigger. Let's do something like this. And of course, in order for this to be of any use to us, we kind of turn it into a geometry. And for this, I want to have a ring like this. So I'm not going to use a circle. I'm going to use another primitive from here, quadrilateral, and I'm going to plug it here. You can remove the fill caps. We don't need it for this one. And of course, we have to make this like a lot smaller. And of course, for the height as well. So now if we look at this, we are starting to get somewhere. Let's make this a little bit thicker. So maybe something like this. And for the height, let's make it a little bit higher. Something like this. And we get this result. And of course, this mushiness doesn't look very good. So let's add more geometry for this part. I'm going to do a resample curve. And let's say I'm going to use 128 points. And as soon as we do this, we kind of get this result. And now you can tweak the values. Let's make this one closer to the pillar, something like this. And we get this result all the way up, as you can see. And now we see a problem. Why is this happening here? Why do these get bigger as they grow larger. That's because the moment we did this to control the scale to make them longer, we altered the scale, and when we turn it to the geometry here, we also transmitted this altered scale, and that's what gives us this result that doesn't help us. And the way to fix that is to use a realize instance that's gonna make this disappear and cancel that custom scale that we transmitted. And now we can use this output that controls the scale of this to decide on some different value. Let's say 0.01 seems to look good. And they are all the same now, up to down. Cool. So that's what we wanted. That's an important note, because this thing that we did with scale here gave us a custom scale, but we want to lose that. So we don't want things to get thicker as they grow longer. That's why we use this important note here. Now that we have these connector rings, I want to do the things that you saw in the animation, add some orbs on it, some balls. So how can we do that? Well, we kind of have to play with the same setup here that we have here. And if we want to use the same material, we can plug it here. But if we want to use a different material, we will plug it here. So let's plug it here. Let me do mesh primitive, icosphere. I'm gonna plug this one here, and I'm gonna add, just so we can see, another material, this green one. And of course, we only have one of these, as you can see in the output. But first of all, it's too big. So we kind of want to make this one smaller. Let's start with 0.1. And we want one on each end of this line. And the question is how we can do that. Well, the instance node will help us. So let me add an instance on points. This is what we want to instance. But the question is from where we get the points. Well, we have this line that if we go at the beginning of this entire setup is this line here. So the difference, because this mesh line that is the center pillar has more points, this one has only 2, and that's perfect for us. So where do we want to take this information on? Well, we want these orbs to move along with the lines. And if we want to move them along with the lines, that means we have to take the rotation information as well. So basically we want to use this output after we rotated the instances. And voila, we get these nice orbs here. And as you can see, we have the same problem. They grow bigger as the lines get longer, but we already know how to fix this. We can plug it from this realize instances node. And now we have this scale that is uniform. And we can control it from here. And in order to synchronize it with the fact that we have this setup here, we can use this that we did here, this node. So let's say Control Shift D to keep the connection. And we can plug it in here. And as soon as we do this, we just have to change the outputs from here. So let's say these are too small, we can increase it. Let's do 0.02. And for the maximum, let's leave it like this for now. I want actually maybe 0.03, something like this. Great. These are not the final values. When I'm going to show you the overviewing of the setup, you will see the final values that I used. Because this, of course, has to look right when we put, let's say, 200 instances. And as you can see, the bolts are too small. So we kind of want to adjust this value to make them look better. Maybe something like this is still too big, 0.5, maybe something like this. Great. Let's put this one back to 75. Excellent. So now we added this detail, and the last detail that I want to add to this is a postament here at the bottom, something like this, as you saw in the demo. So how can we do that? How can we add that postament? Well, first we have to decide, do we want a custom material for it? Yes, we kind of want. So let me take this material from here, plug this one here, and let's make this one, I don't know, orange. Excellent. And now we can plug whatever we want here in this output. So I'm gonna use a cylinder. So let's plug this cylinder here, and we get this result. The depth is definitely too much. Let's try something smaller. And I think this is too small, maybe something like this. And let's add some resolution to this setup, and we get this nice thing going on here. And of course we can set these things smooth, and in order to add a second level to this, I'm gonna do a geometry transform and a geometry join geometry. So if I plug this one here and I use the same geometry and plug this one here, I basically duplicated it, and now we can move it up, something like this. And of course we can make it smaller on 2 axes, something like this. And now let's give it actually something like this to pass the sage mode and material to both of them. And this is how you can add the postament. Of course, now you have 2 options. You either move the postament down, or you move the entire geometry from here up. So I'm gonna do the latter. So I'm gonna do a join geometry and control click to plug this one here, and I'm gonna plunk another transform here, and now I can push this one up, something like this. Awesome. So that will be basically the entire setup, and now it's time for the final point. I'm gonna show you the finished setup, so you can take screenshots of it and recreate this effect for yourself. So that will be the finished setup that gives us this beautiful result. Again, if you want to see the materials, check the video in the description, and the link for the video in the description. Here I'm gonna show you the finished materials. So we started by generating the lines like this, and that's the part that we see here. Then I scaled them, making them grow longer as they grow up, and that's the part that we see here. Then I made the entire thing rotate, and that's what we see here. And then I started to turn everything into a geometry. This is for the connector lines. Then I added the orbs, the connector rings, and the center pillar that is using the geometry used to instance the lines, meaning this line here. It's what we used to create the center pillar. And of course, we added this postament here. And at the end, I moved everything a little bit up, so it will be on the 0 axis. So if I take out of the camera view and close the background, this is what happens to this with this node. I pushed everything to the 0 mark. And talking about the background, this background that you see here is an icosphere that I modified it by flattening the bottom with proportional editing and cutting the top part. And that's only so we have a nice view when we are in the camera view. So this is the entire setup. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you find the things that I presented here inspiring, so you can create your own artwork and do amazing stuff, because Blender and geometry nodes have so much potential for that. So in the hope that I was inspiring to you, I wish to you to create cool